Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our AdRoll webinar, Advertising Post 3PC Deprecation, How to Adapt Your Campaigns. I'm excited to be joining you here today and have a couple of great experts that are joining me as well. But before we get started, I want to give you a little bit background on AdRoll for those who don't know us. AdRoll is a marketing and advertising platform that helps B2C businesses to grow revenue and their reach through one streamlined platform. Our speakers today are going to be Kirsten and Rob. And Kirsten is our senior product marketing manager, and Rob is our senior product manager for advertising. We also have Justin, who's joining us in the chat today to help to answer any questions. So for today, what you can expect to learn, we're going to jump into why third-party cookies are coming to an end. We're also going to talk about how 3PC deprecation impacts marketers and advertisers, and then some of those strategies to help adapt as 3PC deprecation comes to a head. Now I'm going to hand it over to Kirsten, who's going to run through the session for you today.
Hey, thanks, Sam. I'm super excited to share more about the ins and outs of third-party cookies and really how you can make the most of a 3PC less ad strategy. So I'm going to start with a quick 101 of all things cookies. So if we move into the next slide, perfect. Third-party cookie deprecation has been a really buzzy term for years. Now, when we talk about third-party cookie deprecation, we are specifically talking about Google Chrome's plan to phase out third-party cookies in 2024. So Firefox and Safari have both removed the use of third-party cookies on their browsers, but with Chrome holding about 67% of web traffic, the deprecation of third party cookies will now have a much bigger impact on businesses and internet users. So in January, Google Chrome began its 1% testing cohort, which has given ad tech partners like AdRoll the ability to start testing out the foundational technology. I like to think of this like building a house. Google, along with testing partners like AdRoll, we've been building out the foundation of this house. So once it's confirmed that that foundation is stable, there's no cracks in it, we can start to build and test out different forms of targeting. And so, really, third party cookie deprecation on Chrome is just another step in the path to strengthen internet privacy. So, what does this mean? Before we discuss any kind of third party cookie less tactics, I'm going to take a step back and do a quick refresher on how we use third party cookies and the impacts that we're anticipating to see as they get phased out. So, right now, to use third party cookies, brands install the pixel on their website. When a user clicks on an ad or visits the brand website, the pixel fires and then provides the technology with the user data. This information can be used to create retargeting campaigns on platform like AdRoll or Meta, and it helps to track performance and thus improves campaign optimization. So, since we are data tracking of all kinds will be impacted as we move away from third party cookies, ad retargeting, attribution, and optimization will likely see some changes. So now that we are moving from 3PC, it's really important for us to understand the differences between third party and first party cookies. First party cookies are generated and stored locally on a user's browser by the website operator and can only be accessed by the writing domain. When a customer visits your website, these cookies enable activities like the storage of user preferences and login information, as well as any kind of web analytics tracking of pages that the users viewed on your site. So, first party cookies track user activity on a site. They can track pages viewed, videos watched, products purchased, and then this information can be tied to an ID like an IP address or an email address that the user shared. Third party cookies are really primarily used for advertising purposes. ObservePoint actually did a study across 300 globally leading websites and found that about 85% of all third party cookie domains were in relation to advertising. So let's take a quick cookie break. And no, this is not time for you to log off and get a sweet treat. Sorry, I had to sneak in a cookie dad joke in there somewhere. But it can get pretty confusing when you're starting to have more conversations around this topic to keep all of the terminology apart. So I want us to remember cookies are character strings that a website sends to your browser when you visit it. The cookie then serves as an ID for your browser when you return. The data is what is collected to create the profile that better allows us to target people who align with specific behaviors and descriptions. The subject referred to in the term party changes between data and cookies. So, first, zero and third party data represents something entirely different. First party data is everything that can be observed on a domain. Typically, examples include things like the use of visitor data that is captured against cookies. Where this gets a little confusing is that first party cookies, even third party cookies, here would still qualify as first party data. Zero party data is anything that is solicited from site visitors. So this includes form fills, preferences, and personally identifiable information, including email addresses, phone numbers, postal addresses, things like that. And then third party data is data that is captured by another party and then sold to another party for activation. So the act of selling and providing that data to another party is really what makes this third party data. And an honorable mention, you won't see this quite as often, but you might think, okay, we have zero, we have first, we have third. What about second party? And so the data here is collaborated on between two affiliated partners. So an example I like to think of here is with an airline and a credit card. You may, when you're on that airline flying, they probably have a sign on bonus of like 60,000 points for you to sign up with that credit card. That is a partnership that they have. Great example, Amex and Delta. So in this case, Delta might provide some audiences for Amex to activate against, and then vice versa. Again, to make this easy, first party data is everything that you can see, zero party data is everything that you can ask for, and then third party data is everything that you would buy. So, in case any of you or guys are deep into TikTok or for myself, 'cause I'm a millennial, Instagram Reels, you've most likely seen some 2024 ins and outs. My friends are all saying that skinny jeans and oversharing are out. And apparently, cow's milk is back in, which for me as a lactose intolerant is going to stay out. But back in the world of ad tech, third party cookie deprecation has dealt some really major blows to marketers and advertisers who have been using this technology for years. But the good news is that there are plenty of new strategies that marketers really should be starting to use right away to overcome the loss of third party cookie data. Most of these strategies rely on first and zero party cookies for tracking, targeting, and optimization. And a bonus, of course, is that you actually own this data. So let's discuss some of these strategies and really how you can implement them. After this section, if you only have one takeaway, I want it to be that your strategy does not need to change. We're going to make some tactical shifts to ensure that we're spending in the right place and partnering with the right ad tech partners. Top level, we know that how we collect this data will have to shift from third party cookies to first and zero party data. But this means that some of the channels and tactics that we use will have some slight changes in how we leverage them. Another big call out, all of these strategies and tactics will still exist post third party cookie deprecation. We'll still be able to do brand awareness and retargeting and activate own channels. We're just making changes to the back end to better target them with this zero and first party data. I like to think of it actually like the evolution of electric cars. So, removing the use of gas doesn't change the fact that it's the car that's getting us from point A to point B, or the fact that you have to give it some kind of energy to run, or the way that you accelerate and brake. Most of the change is actually under the hood, the thing that you really won't see or feel. These are small differences, like the way that you charge the car, for example. But at the end of the day, it's still a car. So some like contextual targeting, connected TV, and email don't inherently rely on third-party cookies, and so the expected impact for those channels is fairly low. For others, partnering with an ad tech vendor that you trust is going to be more important than ever. And so I'll share a bit more about how we're approaching these changes in a few slides. And then attribution, as it is now, will continue to be critical to ensuring that you're spending the right dollars in the right place and targeting the right people. So if we move into the next slide, contextual targeting doesn't, again, inherently rely on third party cookies. And it's a great brand awareness tactic that allows you to reach audiences in certain contexts. So if you look at the screen here, you'll see an example with Expedia. So Expedia is an online travel agency, and they are going to be showing things like hotels and airlines and being able to book car rentals. And so what applies to that? Luggage. And so here you've seen that this advertiser has chosen this as a site category or a content keyword that they can then activate against. Again, another example here, CTV is not reliant on 3PC, and it's a TV device that connects to the internet to deliver video content. So a smart TV connects to the internet through a built-in capabilities or an external over-the-top device like Roku, Apple TV, and then is most often displayed on television in the home as opposed to other devices like tablets, phones, laptops. Though I will say that they can be viewed there as well. So depending on who your provider is, they may or may not show that information. And then CTV targeting can be used as a publisher provided ID or household ID. Next, moving into retargeting. So we know retargeting is where folks tend to expect to see the biggest impact from third party cookie deprecation. While third party cookies have been the primary source of targeting in the US, there are other levers that we can pull on the back end to make sure that we're making the most of your zero and first party data. In order to make the most of Google's privacy sandbox and some of the other ID types, you'll want to work with an ad tech partner like AdRoll. So you've most likely heard of or seen something about Google Privacy Sandbox or the Protected Audience API. And this is Google's attempt to create technologies that reduce cross site tracking while still giving companies the tools to build thriving digital businesses. There are some misconceptions that with third party cookies gone, marketers won't be able to measure site activity or target their site visitors anymore. In reality, there's a lot of new solutions, including this one, that are actively being built and tested. So interest groups are a great example of this new privacy first approach. They'll allow private tracking of the web browser and understand their interests in a secure location. And then individuals will have the opportunity to better control their interests, blocking ones that maybe aren't relevant anymore or less relevant to their browsing. And then this information is fed to publishers and advertisers. And then finally, based on the interest group of the individual, the publisher's ad space, and then the bids that are placed by the advertisers, the best scoring ad would win. Another great example of how we can leverage first and zero party data are deterministic and probabilistic IDs. So, the deterministic ID is a great option because they're very accurate in understanding who the user is. They're tied specifically to one user. The downside is that they are more difficult to gather, which then limits the volume of IDs. On the other hand, probabilistic IDs are gathered from the site, kind of like context clues, things like IP addresses and browser type, and then these are easier to gather and they're just not quite as accurate as deterministic ID. I like to use the example here. If you are browsing on your sister's or your husband's laptop with a probabilistic ID, there's no way for an advertiser to know whether it's you or your sister, despite the fact that you might have drastically different interests. Really, the TLDR is that if you're using a trusted ad partner, you don't need to worry about this because they'll help you navigate the more technical portion of all of this so that you can still get in front of the most relevant audiences for the right price. Moving into owned channels, collecting first party data really allows you the opportunity to create unique, meaningful touch points with your customers. I love this example here from Amazon. I've actually used it quite a bit. They offer shoppers the opportunity to fill out forms that help their site give recommendations on sizing for things like apparel. So, as you order clothes and share input on their fit, the algorithm actually adapts and starts to recommend the size that they think will fit you best based on your input and then customer reviews. So this builds a ton of value with your customer. Builds trust because you're experiencing really great value add once you've given your information. Some other great examples of leveraging the data to create strong relationships can be in your customer service. So already having certain informations like if they're exchanging for a different size or color, offering applicable discount codes for them, or sharing recommended products. And then finally, so you've done all of this great work in getting the word out about your products, but how do you know that it's resonating and that you're reaching the right audience? Building or leveraging tools that tell the story of how your customers converted is just as important as building out that messaging and creative. So, using UTMs or an ad tech partner like AdRoll, you can better understand customer engagement and conversions. You can view holistic sets of performance data really to inform optimal budget allocation. And then you can identify the channels and campaigns that deliver and assist in your best conversions. So, what's next for you? There's really a handful of questions that you'll want to make sure to ask and keep in mind as you are sourcing different vendors. You really want to lean on your ad tech partners and making sure that they are somebody who's able to provide you with reliable sources of information and who's prioritizing privacy. So, the top three questions I would ask is one, how are you using cookies in your tech? Two, how will you measure the success of my company's campaigns moving forward? And then three, what are you doing to future proof your targeting technology in the privacy forward landscape? So, we're going to hear from our ad role experts, and they're going to share a little bit about our perspective there. But I want to leave you with a handful of key takeaways here. First is to engage and connect with your shoppers. Really look for opportunities to collect first party data and create lasting relationships through your own channels. Two is to test new tactics and track your campaign performance. Now is the time to test, review, and optimize. Three, you don't have to throw out your entire marketing plan. Full funnel marketing strategy is still key, but then the tactics that you do this with will shift a little bit. You should absolutely be relying on your tech partners. You don't need to know all of the technical nuances. That is what we are here for, but you should know the right questions to ask in order to be having those intelligent conversations. And then finally, 2024 is really a learning year for everyone. You are not alone. Even Google and your ad tech partners are still learning what this all really means. So just keep up to date on any kind of updates that become available and keep asking questions. So I'll turn it over to Sam and she will intro Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirsten, for all that information. And I want to encourage everyone, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat or with that Q&A. We did have some that were submitted. And as Kirsten mentioned, we're going to talk about the questions to ask your ad tech partner to our experts as well. But before we jump into that, I just want to share a link to our third-party cookie page. So if you do want to learn more, you can download our beginner guide. We're also going to be coming out with an advanced guide in a couple of months. So if you really do want to get into the nitty gritty, keep an eye out for that. We'll make sure that you all get a copy of it once it's available, as well as you'll get a copy of this recording. With that, let me just stop sharing my screen real quick. I'm going to pull Rob up onto our stage. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So a little bit of background before we jump in. So AdRoll is a division of NextRoll. So NextRoll is our parent company. And we have two business units here. We have AdRoll and RollWorks. We're specifically going to be talking about things that help all of you who would be direct to consumer or B2C marketers out here. But if you do have any questions, we can definitely tap into some of those as well. The first one for Kirsten that I have was surrounding just some of those first party tactics. I know we just went over it, but is there anything else that you can add in on how to really optimize and get your first party data and how to use those effectively?
Yeah, I think a big thing here is for you to have really informed conversations to learn more about what generally you can expect and then know what questions to ask your ad provider. So as you're having those conversations, you understand, hey, what is your perspective on using deterministic IDs or things like that? Being able to have those conversations means that you are going to be better prepared as you start to learn more and get more answers from that. And so I think that's my biggest tip is just keep immersing yourself in what is coming out, what is being shared by people like AdRoll, like Google, all of that, and then just keep up to date and know what questions to ask.
Cool. And with that, then Rob, I'm going to hand it over to you. What are we doing at AdRoll and at NextRoll to help to future proof for third-party cookie deprecation? Almost said data, getting confused. Sorry about that.
It gets confusing. So, the way we view third-party cookie deprecation is fundamentally a technological change. It doesn't really change the act of advertising, showing ads to the right people at the right time. It's a change in how that occurs. And so we're building out different work streams behind the scenes using things like the privacy sandbox from Google, different durable IDs that will not replace the cookie, but offer different ways of targeting people in the future, and using those in concert together to really be able to provide advertisers with the same workflows they use today to target the same people they do today, just without third-party cookies. So, a big thing that we ask, what is this going to look like? What are the tactics? What do I need to change? We are actively making this as easy as possible for advertisers, where we don't have to change anything unless we have to. And right now, we don't see very many places that change has to occur on the advertiser side. There's a lot of work that we have to do. And so our recommendation, is you're evaluating an advertising partner, is understanding where the reliance on cookies is. What are they doing? What's being done to replace that? What are the solutions being used? Is it multi-pronged approach? Are you going to take are you putting all your eggs in one basket? We tend to think that we need to look at as many different tactics as possible on the tech side, so that we can continue to do this for our advertisers and make it easy for them. And so for us, the replacement is, it's on our shoulders. We want to carry that burden, and we want to make sure that advertisers carry as little of that as possible.
Awesome. As a marketer myself, I know that helps to lift a weight off for me of not needing to know everything that is happening, but just knowing that you need to be asking the right questions and working with the right partners. And it's okay to be asking those questions. So don't worry if you're asking it even the same one in a few months, because things are constantly changing. We did have a question from Christoph that I believe was during when we were talking about Google's privacy sandbox, but it was, is it equally reliable in Europe versus the US? Rob, do you have anything from that, working very closely with Google's privacy sandbox?
Right. So if we talk about the privacy sandbox, a big part of the testing that's going on right now, if you follow any of the news on it, is testing for the UK Competitions and Market Authority. So there's a lot of antitrust concerns about the move away from third-party cookies. How will this impact advertisers? How will it impact ad techs? And so just what is this going to enrich Google? And there's a lot of testing that's happening specifically in Europe. We're part of that testing, and we'll be providing our feedback to the CMA directly to help them make the best decision that they can. So the privacy sandbox specifically should work well in Europe, but there's testing being done to validate those claims. I think it's important to ask the question across other tactics as well. We touched on probabilistic and deterministic IDs. It's kind of, there's a question, there's different privacy laws that govern how and which data points you can use. And those are areas that we're also actively investigating. I would say still having all of those tactics available to us will give us the best path forward. So a lot of this, like the too long didn't listen version, a lot of this is still being tested. We think that these tactics are going to offer quite a good approach to post third-party cookie advertising. There's a question about pixels and third-party data. Natalia asks, so Meta and other social platform pixels are all considered third-party data, correct? Is there any updates on what will be used in lieu of pixel? So from our perspective, we use a pixel, and our pixel both helps to build the audiences that we target and collect conversion data. And both of those are considered first party because they occur on our advertiser's site. And so it's like any other analytics platform, we're able to help brands to see what happens on their site. We give visibility into that. And because it's visible from the brand perspective, that becomes your first party data. Even though it's used on a third party tool like ours, it kind of gets confusing in the terminology and where party is thrown around all over the place. But the pixel from our perspective will continue to exist and be a crucial part of our ability to measure advertising efficacy as well as to help build and create audiences for activation moving forward. So from the social platforms, I can't speak to that as much. I think I would still probably consider that first party data, and there will be just updates in terms of how things can be shared. And I would lean on your relationships with your different advertising partners to understand how they are planning for this future.
Awesome. Kirsten, I'm going to throw a question at you. And if you want to say we'll answer after, that's totally fine. But I know it's something that we had submitted in advance, and it's something we often see in our webinars is, if you're moving from one provider to another, or if you have a CRM and you're not using an ad tech partner, when you're getting started, what does that look like? Do you have to start from square one with all of your information? Is there ways to, bring over any of that to help have that customer base? So would love to know at AdRoll how that process works, and if it is something you got to start from square one if you decide to move to a new ad tech partner.
Yeah, so I think there's two parts to that. One, if you already have all of your lists and segmentation built out, you can absolutely import that. It does not need to be net new from scratch. But you can also rely on there are ways to build lists. So having some kind of a contact capture on your website and then connecting that to somebody like AdRoll, that's a great way to just generate some of that information. And then again, like Rob mentioned, being able to connect the pixel is another great way for us to source some of that information. So a little bit of both. Yes, you can create net new, but if you have an existing segmentation plan or base that you're working off of, then of course you can always import that to the platform as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I think that is all we're going to have time for today. I want to thank Kirsten, Rob, and Justin, who is behind the scenes helping to answer all of your questions and giving you all this information. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye, everyone.